Okay, so if everyone can hear me all right, hello to you all. It is very, very nice to see so many of you here today. And you're all very, very welcome to this virtual launch of Made in Ireland Studies on Popular Music. And it's great to see so many familiar names, but also lots of new names as well coming in to join us for this. So thanks so much for being here this evening. For those who don't know me, my name is Áine Mangaoang, and I'm a postdoctoral research fellow here at the Department of Musicology in the University of Oslo in Norway. On behalf of my co-editors, John O'Flynn and Lonán Briain, it is our great pleasure to see so many of you here in cyberspace. So cheers for that, for coming along. John is giving some official thanks in a little bit, but nonetheless, I'd still like to say a huge thank you to the Society for Musicology in Ireland, the conference team and the hosts at University College Dublin in the music department there for generously providing this platform to celebrate the publication of our book. We are incredibly grateful to our guest speaker, Professor Stan Hawkins, who will officially launch our book in a few minutes. Followed by 3 short spotlight presentations from 3 of the book's authors, Laura Watson, Triana Nihikon, and Kieran Briain, in the hope that that will give you just a small flavour of the range of topics that our book covers. We're only sorry that, of course, there isn't enough time to hear from all of our authors in today's virtual launch, but fingers crossed for a time that we can all actually meet together in real life and hopefully celebrate properly. But before I pass over to my colleague Lonán, who will introduce Dan properly in a minute, I'd like to first take this opportunity to say what a joy it's been to work on Made in Ireland. It's been a long journey. John and I first started exchanging ideas about this book back in 2016. After we were finished working on a project at St. Pat's in DCU. And we were delighted when Lonán came on board and joined forces in 2017. And not long after that, we managed somehow to wrangle a very impressive 19 authors and experts in popular music to come on board. And a lot has happened in the intervening years, with progress at times sort of moving in fits and bursts, not least due to the arrival of two new little ones in 2 of the editors' homes in 2018. And so a special shout out there, of course, then to Maeve and Sam, who are not babies anymore, but of course toddlers. And in what I can think is probably a new record in edited academic collections, at least probably in Irish musicology publications, I also want to make a special mention to the additional 7 new humans who were born to 7 of our Made in Ireland authors during the making of this book. So I think a lot of you are here today. I can see Stephen, I think Caroline, Kieran, Eileen, Helen, Jamie, and Stia. I can see a lot of you there. So it's really been a dream project to work on this book for many reasons, too many to mention here today. But I will, however, say that having started this book when I first moved to Scandinavia, the project has now sort of become a kind of a love letter to Ireland's music. And in more recent times, especially in these pandemic days, it's become a sort of a solace in a time when a longing for home has reached new heights. So my hope for this book is that it provides a voice to some of Ireland's more hidden music histories, some lesser known stories and burgeoning music networks, as well as serving as a resource for our music and research communities, whether they're based in Ireland, whether they're in the Irish diaspora or they're immigrants like myself. And of course, this book is only but a snapshot of some of the current research on Irish popular music. And I fear that what we couldn't fit into the volume could have easily filled another book twice over. And perhaps somebody here might want to take up this mantle. But until then, here's to the future of Irish popular music in all of its glorious forms, to its musicians, its critics, its saints and scholars. And Sláinte, if you have a glass, I hope you'll raise it with me. Cheers. Lonán, that's your cue in case you're there.
Hey, thanks, Áine. Thanks, Áine. That was lovely. Really nice introduction there. My job is just to introduce Stan, but I will say if anyone's looking for co-editors on a project, Áine and John have been fantastic to work with. And it's been really fun over the past few years. And of course, all our contributors have just been so great, really kind of responding timely to all sorts of queries. And it's been a great experience. So I'm introducing Stan Hawkins, Professor Stan Hawkins at the University of Oslo. He has been professor of music there for 25 years, since 1995. He's a leading scholar in popular music studies. And of course, he's got plenty of experience working with Routledge and Ashgate. He has 4 monographs out and 6 edited volumes. Most recently, Queerness in Pop Music, Aesthetics, Gender Norms and Temporality from 2016. I think anyone who's studied popular music will know probably his earlier book, Settling the Pop Score, Pop Texts and Identity Politics from 2002. And then last year, his most recent volume, kind of perhaps controversially moving away from Routledge, is with Bloomsbury, the Bloomsbury Handbook of Popular Music Video Analysis. From 2018, 2019, thereabouts. So Stan has also been the series editor for the Routledge Popular and Folk Music series in the past. So we'll give Stan a round of muted applause. Thanks very much, Stan, for joining us.
Thanks very much, Lonán. And many greetings from Oslo. It feels a little bit like the Eurovision, this, doesn't it? Where I'm actually sitting in my apartment that is a part of a recent housing development actually right in the Oslo fjord. And it's called Tjuvholmen, and this forms part of my backdrop today. And Áine is approximately 15 to 20 minutes away from me, just up the road. You wouldn't believe that, would you, Áine, looking at us in this context? Anyway, on this really most auspicious occasion, I'm so delighted to accept the invitation to the book launch of Maiden Island, Studies in Popular Music, which I've just had the great pleasure of reading. The collection is really impressive in its coverage of musicians, styles, and contexts of popular music emanating from Ireland. And the book's endorsements, for those of you who have read it, by Andy Bennett, Tim Taylor, and Sean Williams, bear this out. And in adding to their individual perspectives, I'd like to say that the book is superbly tailored for critical musicological studies as well, with a wealth of concepts and methods on offer that are innovative and really path-breaking. I took a whole lot of notes as I ran through this, realizing that I was only going to speak for 10 minutes. So these will be very truncated responses to the authors and the editors. Bear with me on that front. I thought I would start actually with The Coda by Jerry Smith and his framing of Sinead O'Connor's legendary performance on the Late Late Show, which has a personal resonance when it comes to her performance of Prince's Nothing Compares to You, with her boldly dressed in a red burqa and red hijab. And at that point, I'm a follower of Sufism. As a Prince scholar for some decades now, my falling for O'Connor's rendition of Prince's song Nothing Compares to You became inextricably linked to my awareness of her political landscape in Ireland. Something in the sheer poignancy of her vocal performance, her personal narrative and her persona encapsulated, and certainly still does, notions of national identity, gender, class, and religion, and it uncannily complements Prince's own rooting in African-American identity. Sinead O'Connor's contribution to Irish pop music is also brilliantly addressed, I feel, in this book by Aileen Delane in the first part of it, where the force of feminism and musical embodiment in this artist's performances truly earns her the accolade of Delane's title, Raging Mother Island. Complementing Jerry's coda is the afterword, entitled Songs of Love by Áine Mangaoang, that scrutinizes Neil Hannon from the Divine Comedy, who Áine knows has always enthralled me. In fact, he was one of 23 British dandies selected by me for my Routledge book from 2009 called The British Pop Dandy. And Áine's insight into Hannon's biography, especially his growing up in Northern Ireland in the 1970s and 1980s, casts an important light on not only the concepts of songs, such as Sunrise, but also how they exist as vital historic relics of turbulent periods and times we must never forget. Áine's formulation of her questions to Hannon and his own insights were characteristically insightful and finely tuned at the standard we have all come to expect from Áine in her research work. Now, in many ways, this collection, as I see it, is a breakthrough in the study of Irish popular music. And as John O'Flynn states in the preface, it is curious, isn't it, that certain encyclopedias on popular music have tended to omit Irish music or just relegate to entries on Irish Celtic music. So the three editors, Áine, John, and Lonán, are to really be congratulated for grabbing this baton, finally, and conducting, showcasing, and contextualizing Irish music in such a profound way. Inevitably, a collection such as Maiden Island needs to address the richness and diversity of the country's musical terrain from a multitude of angles. And this is where the mighty task of any such project lies. In part 2, Roots and Roots comprise fascinating studies by Noel McLaughlin and Joanna Braniff on Belfast-born blues performer O'Teal Patterson, Triona Nishakon's examination of the symbolism of Irish language in mainstream popular production, not least through post-colonial identity, which then carried through to the chapter by Sheila Denvia on the songs of Tom Showiga and Kieran O'Farta within a Connemara-based community. This study then merged beautifully with Stephen Miller's close look at rebel songs during the Northern Ireland Troubles and Adrian Scahill's reflections on post-revival and post-genre and a wide post-national turn, all of which resonated extraordinarily well with John O'Flynn's consideration of new platforms for Irish-based artists at the onset of the 21st century. So the idea of projections of otherness by the producers of the Other Voices festivals was highly compelling, which formed a common link with the other parts of the book, which I'll now turn to. In part 3, it was really interesting to follow the discourses on scenes and networks that I know will be of enormous value to my own students here in Norway. The authors dealt with the interplay between music scenes by engaging and framing the idea of national and international cultural networks. Let's start with Jamie Jones, who paints a really great picture of Dublin's underground DIY scene by probing at aspects of scale, value, and visibility that are rendered sustainable by Web 2.0 platforms and global affordances. Similarly, Aileen Hogan's examination of DIY-influenced popular music scenes in Cork highlighted the importance of music making and personal values invested in Cork scenes. And insightful was also Caroline Ann O'Sullivan's study of Dublin's indie and dance music scenes that exposed attitudes towards relationships to local music scenes in a post-internet era, which intersected then well with Kieran Ryan's historic take on Ireland's music fanzine culture and how and why they have been steadily pushed underground. So the impact of internet cultures on fanzines and fan communities raised a whole host of new issues and phenomena for me. And finally, in Griffith Rolofson's essay on rap and hip hop scenes, he demonstrates vividly that hip hop is alive and strong in the context of the local experience and forms part of the fabric of the oral and oral traditions of the country. So the idea of the hip hop interpolation really comes alive in this chapter, with references to many Irish hip hop pioneers and musicians. But finally, I actually want to land on the first part of the book that deals with music industries and historiographies. The sheer wealth of ideas in Timothy Heron's brilliant discussion of the first wave of punk in Northern Ireland illuminate links with anti-sectarianism that created a vibrant and volatile liberal space for community bridge building. Then Anne-Marie Hanlon's equally important study threw a major spotlight on the ongoing struggles for women's music and LGBTQ+ culture in Ireland. Undoubtedly, this study, Anne-Marie, will be invaluable for gender theorists and popular musicology, as well as for the LGBTQ+ community on a global scale. I've already referred to Aileen Delane's examination of Sinead O'Connor, which is another major leap, not only in terms of researching into this artist, but also tackling the gender imbalances in the music industry. Far too few studies have been undertaken on O'Connor, and Aileen raises the benchmark considerably by emphasizing the political vitality of this artist on many levels, including feminist views, religious faith, political interventions, racism, and child abuse. Laura Watson's chapter formed a fitting precursor, I felt, to Aileen's, with 4 memoirs by Dublin artists, Bono, Phil Lynott, Bob Geldof, and Christy Dignam. Then Helen Gabbins and Lonán O'Brien's informed historical discussion around the broadcasting of rock and the fanning sessions as a major precursor to the proliferation of new media technologies as the primary source of the latest popular hits today, gets them to conclude we may never encounter another era when radio maintains such a monopoly of control when it comes to connecting audiences to musicians. And then I finally turned to the first chapter of the book by Michael Mary Murphy, with its social historical analysis of Irish labels from the 1920s to 2019, which demonstrated superbly how many of Ireland's labels did not conform to the standard operating strategies of the major global music industry, and that local and independent labels, while often underappreciated and underrepresented, had a vital role to play in Ireland's creative ecosystem. So overall, the editors have done an impressive job in organizing this collection and drawing together such a diverse group of authors. You have offered a panoramic view of a formidably extensive topic. As you state in your introduction, the steady growth of Irish popular music since World War II has transformed the musical infrastructure of the country, as well as legitimizing the study of popular music. And that's a very, very critical point here. So in my view, the strength of this collection lies in the delicate balance of fusing global names and icons with musicians relatively unknown outside the country in a bid to emphasize the vast contributions so many have made to Ireland's cultural heritage. In sum then, this is a much needed contribution and injects a dazzling ray of light into these uncertain political and pandemic times. So congratulations to everyone on this milestone achievement. You've certainly done Routledge, the field of popular music studies, and Ireland proud.
Stan, on behalf of the editorial team and all of us contributing to the book, thank you so much for such an elegant, thoughtful, and comprehensive response to the book. In fact, I don't think I've been at many book launches where somebody has managed to just sum up and to give perspective on each of the chapters, each of the contributions. I was wondering if I would need to kind of mention some myself, but you left nothing out, and we're so grateful for that. We enjoyed editing the chapters, and it's just lovely to hear this back from you. And I think, you know, given your vast editorial experience, given your take on global popular music, and looking at this as it relates to international popular music studies, but also quite rightly, the series title is Made in Ireland. So it's that focus that we chose, which is primarily on the domestic music making. We do also, of course, mention U2, but it's hopefully adding that other dimension. So you touched on many things that were quite important for us. I mean, for example, we were emphatic from the beginning that when we're talking about Made in Ireland, that it's a geographical boundary. And here I give a shout out to my colleague, Ruth McManus, who provided us with a map, but also that it's two jurisdictions, and particularly in the case of Neil Hannon, that we're talking about not just one ethnic identity, but several, and that comes through. I think also the emphasizing the local and the international particularly comes through when we look at something like, notwithstanding my remark in the preface about the reduction of Irish music to the very typical Celtic sounding music, but in fact what a number of contributors have brought about as well is that, particularly in more recent times, in an Adrian Scal's chapter, that the revival, that the interface between popular music and traditional music has worked out in a very unique way in the Irish context. And I'm particularly personally pleased that we have two scholars, Sheila and Trina, who are representing the scholarship in the Irish language, and that while the Irish language is numerically a small proportion of people speak it now in the country as their first language, it's enormously important, and has, I suppose, crossed over into the international popular arena as well, particularly through Clonard and so on. So I am just going to thank you once again for just such an amazing read of our book and response to it, and we're all very honored that you took the time out to do this. I'm going to move on, if I may, to say I personally would like to mention my two co-editors. I can't say how much a pleasure it has been to work with both of them. And as Áine said, it began with conversations in 2016, but we actually had one face-to-face meeting in 2017, which was in the Woodstock Cafe in Phibsborough, which is just down the road from where I live. And since then, we had all our meetings on Skype, which seems very exotic in the time of Zoom. So I won't get through to thank everybody who should be thanked, but if you don't mind, I'll refer everybody to the acknowledgements. And as some of you may know, there's the introduction, and all the front matter material is available on a preview in Google Books. But of course, I would like to mention now the many colleagues that we worked with at various stages of the process at Routledge, and in particular our series editors, the wonderful Franco Fabri and Goffredo Plastino. So we were privileged to work with two leading scholars in global popular music, and as everybody I think knows by now, this is part of the Routledge Global Popular Music series. I think there's a Made in Finland just out, and Made in Sweden was done quite a number of years ago. So Sam, we're looking forward to Made in Norway coming out quite soon, I'm sure. And we'll all attend the book launch for that. So I would also like to say again to thank the SMI committee, mostly made of colleagues at UCD. And if you don't mind me in particular mentioning Wolfgang, Annika and Owen, who were just not only really, really helpful, but just so welcoming, and it's just been amazing to be here for this. So now for the final section of the launch, we have a video that is made up of short videos made by 3 of our contributors, Laura, Trina, and Kieran, and we're immensely grateful to them. But also huge thanks to Áine, who has edited this. And as it'll be very clear that the 3 sections that Stan refers to are all represented here. Áine is going to say something briefly at the end, but for now, I just want to thank everybody for coming here, to thank especially our contributors, our amazing contributors, who has been the greatest pleasure to work with. And I hope we can all see each other for a bit of a chat after the video. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Laura Watson, Assistant Professor and Deputy Head of Music at Maynooth University. I was thrilled when Áine, Lonán and John invited me to contribute to Made in Ireland Studies in Popular Music. Part 1 of the book is subtitled Music, Industries and Historiographies, and this is where my chapter appears. My piece is titled Don't Believe a Word, Memoirs of Irish Rock Musicians. Thin Lizzy fans will recognise where I found inspiration for the title. The band released a single called Don't Believe a Word in 1976. Not only are Thin Lizzy central to my discussion, but Phil Lynnett's sceptical lyrics about what we say and what's true really resonate when we read music autobiographies. In my chapter, I analyse the self-portraits of 4 acts and their lead singers. I begin with U2 and Bono, move on to Thin Lizzy and Lynett, then the Boomtown Rats and Bob Geldof. Finally, Aslan and Christy Dignam. These bands all share common ground as acts that originated in Dublin during the 1970s and early 80s. Something else which links them and their books is a relationship with Ireland's storytelling practices. Situated at the interface of music and literature, in a country where song and storytelling traditions intertwine, these rock memoirs are conditioned not only by commercial trends in the Anglophone music industry, but also by the privileged cultural status of literature in Ireland. U2 and Bono have published 2 such books to date. There is the band autobiography, U2 by U2, which came out in 2006, and that was co-authored by the 4 band members and the journalist Neil McCormick. The lead singer also has his own book, Bono on Bono, Conversations with Mishka Asaya, that was published in 2005. Both texts serve commercial and artistic agendas, including what might be called Bono's extra-musical agenda of performing in the political arena. Much as listeners to a U2 album may be conscious of 4 musicians fulfilling disparate roles, but more attuned to the unified expression that emerges, readers of this book encounter a unified text with balanced input. Here, U2 are utilising a narrative strategy which mirrors the core aesthetic value of their creative process. And here, that narrative strategy is centred on their aesthetic of collaboration. In 2012, Thin Lizzy guitarist Scott Gorham collaborated with journalist Harry Doherty to produce the first official band story. But Phil Lynnett's mother, Philomena, had already authored 2 memoirs about her son. Let's remember then that it's not only the stories, but also the storytellers who shape Ireland's rock history. Bob Geldof published his autobiography at the age of 35, a year after the Live Aid concerts. He mobilised the autobiography genre to reconstruct his public persona. His book helped reinvent him from fading pop star to international activist. Whereas Geldof positions himself as a figure on the global stage, Christy Dignam of Aslan has published 2 memoirs that entrench Aslan's image as a band of grounded local working class Dubliners. I'll conclude there for now. The recent announcement that Sinead O'Connor intends to publish her memoir next year indicates that there will be a lot more to be said about this subject. But for now, thank you for listening.
Díos mar híomh go léir is mis tríal na níthe cháin, agus ar a ggéaldal síos bhfuil mo saothar úntach nósa Made in Ireland nó déantanéireann a tréaslú leis a bhuireann agrathireacht a cóghardachas mór libh go léir. My name is Áine and I am author of the chapter entitled The Politics of Sound Modernity and Postcolonial Identity in Irish Language Popular Song. This chapter focuses on how song performs the postcolonial self, and I'm particularly interested in the various ways in which popular artists engage with the Irish language and how this in turn created the space for for the emergence of new identities and new expressions of selfhood. What I argue is that in Irish language popular song we find a real diversity of subjectivities, not just being represented, but actually being created through that processual quality of popular song experience. So I look at three moments in Irish language popular song which I think illustrate this fluid and processual quality of song. The first being the incredibly upbeat and buoyant Eurovision Song Contest entry Ceol a Ghorá, or the Music of Love. This was the first and only Eurovision Song Contest entry through the medium of Irish and caused a huge sense of pride and giddiness and anticipation to sweep through the country. But ultimately it concluded in a moment of sabotage on the night of the Eurovision Song Contest itself. And the story of the song illustrates that sense of fluidity that there can be for the sounds of Irish for various listenerships. And then the second moment concerns the most famous Irish language popular song of all, that being Theme from Harry's Game by Clonard. Clonard, of course, being native speakers of Irish from the Donegal Gaeltacht. And I'm particularly interested in how the sounds of Donegal Irish fused with the other performative qualities, both visual and sonic, in Theme from Harry's Game to allow for a new sense of Irishness and selfhood to come to the fore at that particular moment in time. And then the last moment that I look at is the release of Fuil Orsa, which translates as Ancient Blood, by the Irish black metal band Primordial. This really illustrates the way that there are multiple identities expressed in Irish language popular song repertoire more generally. And this would have been released in the 90s before the establishment of the very popular Irish language television station, TG Cahill. And so this was a bold move. And in doing so, I argue that Primordial recreated the sounds of Irish and what they might mean. And through doing this, they performed a real sense of alternative identity, a sense of Irishness that could be understood in contradistinction to mainstream Ireland. So these are some of the things that I talk about, and I hope that you enjoy. And also I just wanted to congratulate the incredible editorial team again. Gur míle maith agaibh go léir.
Just checking, is the sound still gone?
No, we have it. We have it.
You have it, go back, great,
Thank
okay.
you.
Examines the role of fanzines in do-it-yourself or DIY music scenes in Ireland, with a focus on some publications that have emerged since the turn of this century. With the arrival of punk rock in the mid-1970s, fanzines would become an integral part of alternative music cultures for decades. These cut-and-paste photocopied publications positioned themselves as the authentic voice of the underground. Since the publication of Ireland's first punk fanzine, Raw Power, in 1977, well over 200 different titles have been published, spreading and exchanging information on music scenes bonded by taste or locality. For the most part, they can be considered ephemeral publications, with the majority not making it beyond a handful of issues. At the start of this century, they were still quite visible in DIY scenes, found in places such as record stores and gigs, and in the hands of musicians, promoters, and fans that all comprised this alternative art world. However, like other types of media, they're facing challenges from new platforms that offered new outlets for fans to culturally participate. Nonetheless, the fanzine hasn't disappeared completely. with intermittent revivals signalling some interest in the format. Long-running titles like Riot 77 and Loserdom have continued to publish occasional editions, and newer publications have also appeared sporadically. This chapter gives particular attention to some of those new titles. We Play Here, a Cork-based publication that eschewed the traditional look and feel of the fanzine, lasted 2 issues between 2013 and 14, and was produced by Owen O'Sullivan, a young music blogger and journalist. Ian Mullaney's Hatred of Music published its 3rd and final edition in 2014. It favoured a much more minimalist design aesthetic, similar to what Chris Atten terms an anti-design ethos in fanzine production. In Mullaney's words, I wanted it to be the opposite of the internet. And then one of Ireland's most well-known fanzine writers from the 1980s and 90s, Niall McGuirk, re-emerged with 2 issues of Hope. These zines have come and gone, but that's what fanzines have always done. They've been temporary snapshots of what is happening in the scenes they're representing, and by their nature somewhat disposable. Perhaps somewhat ironically, there's been a renewed cultural and historical interest in the format, noticeable in heritage initiatives like Zine Archives in Dublin and Cork, and the publication of a collection of the 1980s fanzine Box in hardback book format last year. And while there might be a sense that it's an outdated format, there may still be space for the print publication. Since writing this chapter, a new fanzine has emerged from Cork entitled Flail of Venom, with a focus on extreme metal music, demonstrating potential for the fanzine to be still a conduit for fan communication in more underground music practices.
Brilliant. So that is the end of our little video presentation from our authors, and I thought it would be a nice idea to pre-record them. I thought it would be a bit smoother, but I'm sorry for the sound dropping out in the middle. But thank you so much, Laura, Triana, and Ciarán for obliging us with a very short notice to make those lovely summaries of their videos. If anyone now has any questions or comments or anything that they'd like to add at this point, we have a tiny bit of time at the end, and we'd be happy to make the most of these minutes together. But feel free to use the chat, feel free to unmute yourself. I think we don't want to run too much over time, but I think we can take an extra minute or 2 here if you'd like. It's completely impossible to see everybody, so apologies if I'm not seeing anyone. If they have their hands raised or anything like that, feel free to just unmute and talk if you are there.
Yeah, somebody says, go ahead and sell some books now. Where can we find this excellent volume? Yes,
we have done a terrible job of actually that part of it, sorry. It's online on Routledge on their website, and I can send some details of it, but just Google Made in Ireland and you'll find it. Thank you, Griff, for that reminder. Please do, but if you don't want to buy a copy, please just recommend it to your local library. We'd love it to be a resource that people can actually use and access, and it's available in hardback and soft copy and in ebook as well.
If I may, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Áine, John, and Lonán. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with you. I think you gave Joanna and I you gave us our best voice, our best version of the chapter. Thank you very, very much for that. But in particular, it's just very flattering and to be asked to contribute and to be part of such a range of insightful scholarship. I mean, I had to laugh when I discovered I'd been sort of cast as a founding father of Irish popular music studies. I find it difficult enough to tie my own shoelaces, but it was 20 years ago, believe it or not, since Martin McLuhan and I wrote Hybridity and National Musics. And that was kind of oddly animated by a punky spirit. We couldn't understand why Irish rock and popular music was off the radar, given Ireland's peculiarities, positive and negative, and its relationship to broader cultural practices, whether diaspora, the residue of empire, and so forth. So we entered into that in a kind of punky spirit. But it's incredible now to look 20 years later at the sheer diversity of approaches, and to sit and be a learner myself and learn about all these other areas that I, as someone who's supposed to be cast as an expert in the field, I find myself a young undergraduate learning a lot of new things. And that's surely what it's all about. There's a richness there that it's great to be part of, and it's great to learn. So that in itself is remarkable, and congratulations to all of you. And it's wonderful reading other people's insightful work, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You're obviously too young to be the founding father of popular music studies in Ireland, but I think you have been inspirational to so many people. And I do remember when I was doing my own PhD and saw your completed dissertation from University of Ulster in 1999, I really thought you had said everything at that point. So thank you. And it has been a privilege to have so many experienced scholars in Irish popular music and so many emerging scholars. It's just been a wonderful combination.
Well, John, thank you. But I mean, I always think of myself as someone a la Foucault, who's compelled to discourse authoritatively about certain things, even when I have nothing authoritative to say. So it's very, very nice of you to say that. But I mean, a bit like our Joanna and I's Ottilie Patterson chapter, I always think the founding father of Irish popular music studies is actually a mother in the form of Barbara Bradby. And I mean, I think Barbara kicked everything off with To Whom Do You Two Appeal back in 1984. And it's a bit like Michael Mary Murphy's chapter. It's interesting that it took something being published in popular music to mark the start of Irish popular music studies. And that's odd in itself, because Barbara, of course, was publishing in the Cranebag Book of Irish Studies, and that landmark piece came out there. And I just think it's interesting. Again, we have hidden mothers. If Ottilie Patterson is Van Morrison's kind of secret nemesis, then I mean, we always joke, what does the Northern Irish heritage narrative do now if Ottilie Patterson becomes public via this book? Because do the heritage folk go, oh shit, there's an earlier blues woman there. Do we scrub that story and start again? I mean, it presents all sorts of interesting questions, you know, and it's just great to be able to air this stuff, because I think we're doing much more underground, much more interesting things in books like this than are going on in the mainstream. We're much more edgy, much more critical, and that it's nice to be part of that. That's why I signed up to be an academic in the first place.
Thanks, Noel.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Noel. I see Aileen had a hand patiently raised. So
thanks, Áine. Thanks, John. Thanks, Lonán. It's one thing to work with really excellent editors who know how to bring out the best in you, just as you said, and make your chapter the best it can be. But it's quite another thing to work with editors who have a very healthy outlook on what it needs to be contributing to a project. Listening, sometimes we're under pressure to in the kind of neoliberal system to just produce and put things out, and people are pushed in particular ways. But personally, and I know other people have felt this, I found that these editors were able to take on board our life situations, whether it was new babies or illnesses, and to do it with an empathy that never ever kind of lost sight of the end project. And so for me, this actually felt like a community, and I would never consider my chapter an output. I feel like it's just part of something bigger, and I just can't thank you enough. And you're a model for how to be editors. So good on you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Briain. And maybe I just want to say one final thing, and maybe there are other people who wish to, but just to, I know you're quite right in identifying Barbara Bradby as being a founding mother of Irish popular music studies. And you may not or may not be aware that for the launch of Made Music and Identity in Ireland, co-edited with Mark Fitzgerald, Barbara actually launched that. And I know that two PhDs that she supervised, Carolyn and Michael, are represented in this book. So thanks for pointing that out.
I just realized I'm very conscious
Thank you very much.
to go beyond the hour, but if anyone has any last things they'd like to say, please. This is really lovely. It's really lovely, and I think it probably, at least for me, feels all the more meaningful having not seen anybody who's in this room in real life in a really long time. So this is the nicest. This is definitely the nicest occasion that's happened in a while. So thank you very, very much for being here. I do want to give a chance to anyone who joined late to the room, if they want to say anything or have any questions or comments, please feel free to jump in now. And Joanna said this is the biggest crowd she's seen since March. Thank you, Joanna. Likewise, likewise.
Maybe it's time to go into, we could do Zoom breakout rooms if people want to hang around for a chat.
I think now is a very nice time to raise a glass and say cheers, everybody. I left my glass upstairs. I had to leave the room because the child was making too much noise. I have a very loud toddler, so my drink is upstairs, but a virtual raising of the glass to you all for being here this evening. Huge thank you to the Society for Musicology in Ireland. Thank you, Wolfgang, for staying to the bitter end of today in what's been a really wonderful conference so far. So thank you all so much for your time and attention and for making time for us today. And I hope we can all meet up in real life really soon. But until then, cheers, everybody. Sláinte.
Thank you.
Yes, Sláinte.
Sláinte.
Oh, very nice.
Sláinte.
Take care.
Mama. Hello?
Yeah.
Mama.
Don't know. It's the first time I've met you in person after all these years.
Hello, John. How are you? Great to
Very well.
Great to actually kind of meet you at last, even if it is virtually. Eventually, we will get that physical launch, I hope, at some point in time.
Definitely, definitely, and a pint.
Oh, that would be nice. That would be nice. I mean, even when I was getting your address and I was looking at Phibsborough written on the screen, I thought, oh, I just love to be in a Dublin pub. It's been so long. Talking music with colleagues and friends would be absolutely delightful. Are we all able to have a drink? Okay. I mean, Harry White mentioned a drink, I think, before proceedings even started, and that sent me off to the fridge. I'm sort of ready to go but I don't know Zoom technology terribly well in terms of breakout rooms and all of that. But you all must be incredibly relieved and delighted. But it's. I mean, I jumped the gun and ordered the book on Amazon.
Oh, we haven't seen a copy yet.
Oh no, I ordered it on Amazon and it arrived a couple of days ago. And I'm trying to make my way through it chronologically as best I could, but I only got finished the first section. But I loved all the intro. I like the way that you each took a section and edited it, and having little small bespoke introductions for each section was really useful. It will provide a brilliant roadmap for anybody not familiar with the territory. It's very, very impressive. Great to be included.
That's actually was stipulated for the book series. You know, the series editors were really great, but they were quite particular about having, I think it's when people have a book series, they want, you know, them all kind of stacked on a shelf, all the same format. But in the end, they were really flexible, and we went way over the word count and all that. But they were great.
Well done. It's absolutely superb. I also read Áine's Neil Hannon interview at the end, which I greatly enjoyed. I mean, you got an awful lot out of him. You wouldn't let him off the identity hook, as it were. So that was all very, very interesting. But I'm talking too much, so I better kind of stop.
No.
Here's congratulations to everybody. I hope you feel as elated and as honoured to be part of the project as I do.
Great to have you.
Say congratulations in person. You know, John and I see each other at council meetings. It was great to see Áine and Lonán again. It's ages since I've seen you. I think it's a year since I've seen you, Lonán. Probably 2, Áine, since I've seen you at least. You know, before this, like quite apart from SMI, I always was of the opinion that book launches don't work online, but they do. Like it's just fantastic. I feel so uplifted. I was feeling tired around 4:30 today, you know, just after a day of Zoom and yesterday too, but I just feel so uplifted to celebrate this. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Well, it's funny, I found myself getting excited for the conference, and I think when there were events online first, it was hard to get excited about it, but I think now, yeah, they are gatherings, but Stan did such an amazing job. I was really gobsmacked really with that, that he covered every chapter so well.
Fantastically launched, yeah. Absolutely fantastically, yeah. And it's just fantastic to see so many people here, you know, gathered around in celebration. I think we need it more than ever now, actually, to have this, you know. So really well done. I'm going to leave now because it's been a long day. Yeah, but see you tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye.